An arrow through the chest. A hairpin through the throat. That was how it ended for us. Lu Yunzheng, the young general who had just returned in glory to the Saint Dynasty, and me, his wife, Shun Jiasue. They found our bodies in a private villa west of the capital. The officials at the Court of Judicial Review concluded that we had slaughtered each other in a fit of mutual rage. Miss? Miss? The voice in my ear pulled me back. The sharp, agonizing pain in my chest hadn't even faded yet. I looked up, dazed. A familiar face came into focus. Bai Ji. I whispered. My maid, Bai Ji, answered with a crisp nod, a playful smirk dancing on her lips. Miss, don't tell me you're backing out again. Going where? I asked instinctively. Bai Ji's grin widened. Young Master Lu is here to formally propose. He's likely at Yong'an Hall this very moment. Didn't you say you wanted to take a peek? Of course, if you're too shy, we don't have to go. I didn't hear the rest of her words. My head was ringing. Return valid JSON only. I looked around, my heart trembling in my chest. I was supposed to be dead. I had killed Lu Yunzheng, and he had killed me. Yet here I was, standing in my family home, on the long corridor I had walked 1,000 times before. Miss? Bai Ji saw my face turn pale and jumped in surprise. But a second later, I hiked up my skirts and sprinted toward Yong'an Hall. Bai Ji stood frozen for a moment before shaking her head with a smile. She thought I was just impatient to see my fiancé. After all, Lu Yunzheng was handsome. We had been promised to each other for years, and everyone thought we were a match made in heaven. She hurried to catch up. I reached the courtyard of Yong'an Hall. Before I could even step inside, a voice I knew down to my marrow drifted out. Uncle Shun, Annie Shun. Yunzheng is here today, but not to ask for the hand of your daughter, Jiasue. I wish to marry Miss Gushiji. I hope you will grant your blessing. His voice was firm, urgent. It was Lu Yunzheng. I stopped dead in my tracks, my eyes wide with shock. In my last life, on this exact day, he had come to propose to me. Something was different. A thought flashed through my mind like lightning. Is he back, too? What did you say? Inside the hall, my father, General Shin Zhengsheng, and my mother, Ji Wan, stood up abruptly. They looked like they couldn't believe their ears. Lu Yunzheng straightened his back and raised his voice. I have feelings for Miss Gushiji. I am here today to ask for her hand. Bai Ji, who had just caught up, let out a small gasp. The three people inside the hall turned toward the sound. When my parents saw me standing there, their expressions shifted instantly to horror. Sway sway. My mother ignored Lu Yunzheng and rushed to my side. Seeing how pale I was, she pulled me into her arms, her heart breaking for me. The Shun and Lu families were both military lineages. Lu Yunzheng's father had once been my father's subordinate. They were old friends who knew everything about each other. My father had agreed to the match years ago because he thought I'd never be mistreated in the Lu household. We grew up together, practiced martial arts together. Everyone called it a perfect union. My mother had spent the whole morning dressing me up. She remembered the shy, happy look on my face in the mirror earlier. Now, she assumed my heart was being ripped out. I quickly adjusted my expression. I let my face stay pale, my eyes looking appropriately stunned. When my gaze met Lu Yunzheng's, I didn't miss the flicker of chaos in his eyes. It was a mess of hatred, fear, regret, and confusion. I knew that look. He was reborn. You bastard. My father roared. He slammed his hand down on the tea table, shattering it instantly. Lu Yunzheng, you dare betray my daughter? Do you have any idea how much your father begged me to agree to this marriage? Lu Yunzheng watched me closely. He was clearly wondering if I had returned from the dead as well. But I didn't let a single crack show. He thought he knew me. He thought the old Jiasue was impulsive and wore her heart on her sleeve. He figured if I had truly been reborn, I would have already charged at him with a sword. Satisfied that I was still the innocent girl from his past, he looked away. His priority now was getting what he wanted. He thought of Gushiji, and his heart warmed. In his mind, she was his true love, the only one who truly cared for him. If he was destined to become a world-famous general again, why should he be a coward this time? Why marry me just to please my father? Uncle Shun, Lu Yunzheng said, his voice hardening. I have only ever seen Sui Sui as a sister. The one I love is Miss Gu. That old engagement was just my father's wish. I was too young to know what love was then. Besides, You've always treated Miss Gu like your own daughter. If I marry her, the bond between our families remains the same. It was true that my parents treated Gu Shiji like their own. Her father, a junior officer, had died saving my father's life during the war with the Mo Kingdom. My father had lost his left arm in that same battle. When Gu Shiji's mother died of grief shortly after, my father brought the 11-year-old girl back to the capital. At first, my mother suspected she was my father's secret love child from the border. But once she learned the truth, she felt so guilty that she made sure Shiji had everything I had. I treated her like a real sister, protecting her and taking her everywhere. That was how she met Lu Yunjung. She was gentle and kind, or so everyone thought. My mother's anger boiled over. How shameless. You claim to love Shiji? She is virtuous and shares a deep bond with my daughter. She would never look at you. And if you only felt brotherly love, why didn't you speak up sooner? Why wait until the day of the proposal? Have you even told your father about this? Do you even have a conscience? I leaned into my mother's embrace. Hearing her defend me brought tears to my eyes as I remembered the agonizing moment we were separated in my previous life. But hearing her absolute trust in Gu Shiji made my heart ache with a different kind of pain. I had given Shiji my whole heart. I had cared for her more than my own brother because her father had died so mine could live. Looking back now, it all felt so strange. Gu Shiji was perfect in everyone's eyes. She got along with everyone, but she was always cold and distant toward Lu Yunjung. I remember asking her once if he had been bullying her. She answered me with such righteous sincerity. She told me that because Lu Yunjung was my fiancé, she had to keep her distance to avoid any gossip. I believed her. I had a fiancé I grew up with and a best friend who felt like a sister. I never suspected a thing. It was laughable. It wasn't until my entire family was destroyed that I learned the truth. Lu Yunjung and Gu Shiji had been having a secret affair behind my back for years. To marry her openly, Lu Yunjung didn't hesitate to frame my family and sentence us all to death. Thinking about it made my blood boil. I trembled, wanting nothing more than to grab a sword and run him through right now. But logic held me back. The case that brought down the Shin family, the accusation of treason, was a massive web of lies. It was too big for someone like Lu Yunjung to pull off alone. There was someone else behind him, someone powerful enough to cover the sky with one hand. If I didn't find the real mastermind, my family would never be safe. That was why I pretended to be panicked earlier. I couldn't let Lu Yunjung know I had been reborn. I needed to use him as a lead to find the person pulling the strings. But first, I had to make my parents see Gu Shiji for who she really was. I couldn't let them be stabbed in the back by the person closest to them. Mother, wait, I said, stepping forward to stop her. My mother, Ji Wan, looked at me with a mix of pity and frustration. She thought I was still trying to protect Lu Yunjung. She grabbed my hand and sighed. Sway, it's our fault. Your father and I were blind. We thought this man was a good match for you. Now you see his true colors. He's ungrateful and dares to lust after Shiji. A man like this isn't worth your time. Lu Yunjung looked at me, and for a split second, a trace of hesitation crossed his face. We were childhood sweethearts, after all. He probably thought that if Shiji hadn't appeared, he would have been happy to spend his life with me. But feelings are fickle things. Besides, he still remembered how I fought back like a cornered beast in our previous life before I died. He was terrified of me. To him, the general's mansion was doomed anyway. He just wanted to take Shiji and cut ties with the Shun family as fast as possible. My father, Shun Zhengsheng, walked over and placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. His voice was warm and steady. Sway, don't overthink this. Lu Yunjung isn't fit to carry your shoes. I'll get justice for you. I trusted his father, but clearly, the man can't raise a son. I won't let this go. He turned his gaze toward Lu Yunjung, his eyes turning cold and hard. Lu Yunjung flinched. In our last life, he only went through with the marriage because he was afraid of my father's power and because his own father was a nightmare. His father had a favorite concubine and a younger son he adored, leaving Lu Yunjung desperate to prove himself. Are you regretting it now? My father barked. Lu Yunjung clenched his fists, but his expression remained stubborn. I know I've done wrong, General, but it's better to speak the truth now than to become a resentful couple after marriage. I knew exactly where his confidence came from. In my past life, his father, Lu Yongzhu, died a hero's death in the war against the Mo kingdom. Lu Yunzheng then took over the army, won a massive victory, and became a legend. Everyone said the son had surpassed the father. I wondered now if Lu Yunzheng had a hand in his own father's death. That was a question for another day. I walked toward him slowly. Lu Yunzheng took a half step back, fear flashing in his eyes, but he forced himself to stand his ground. He probably thought I was going to beg him to stay. He put on a look of sincere regret. Sui, I am sorry. I'll give you whatever compensation you want, but I have no romantic feelings for you. Please, don't cling to this. When I was just one step away, I didn't say a word. I swung my hand and slapped him across the face with everything I had. He tried to dodge, but he was too slow. The slap landed perfectly, making his head snap to the side. I saw stars in his eyes as his cheek turned bright red. I've practiced martial arts since I was a child. I might not be stronger than him, but I was definitely faster. Lu Yunzheng, you're damn right you're sorry, I said, my voice ice cold. The engagement is off. Starting today, the general's mansion will let everyone know that the eldest son of the Lu family is a man of foul character, unworthy of being a Shun family son-in-law. We are done. But as for Shiji, you won't touch a single hair on her head. My mother immediately backed me up. Exactly. Don't you dare set foot in this mansion ever again. Lu Yunzheng seemed relieved that I was agreeing to the breakup, but his face darkened when I mentioned Shiji. You can end the engagement. You can ruin my reputation. I don't care. But I am marrying Shiji. I let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Ruin your reputation? I'm just telling the truth. Which part of it isn't earned? I was always like this. I loved fiercely, but when I hated, I was ruthless. Lu Yunzheng knew my temper, so he didn't bother arguing. He just repeated, I'm marrying her. No one can stop me. I saw the opening I needed. I turned back to my parents, looking worried. Father, Mother, it looks like he won't give up. If he goes out and starts spreading rumors, it'll ruin Shiji's reputation. Maybe we should bring Shiji here, so she can tell him to his face that she wants nothing to do with him. That should end his delusions. I'm just worried she's too gentle and might get scared. My parents frowned. My mother was a woman of action. She nodded firmly. We need to end this now, or Shiji will never have peace. Bai Shuang, go to the Yangon Hall and bring the second miss here. She added a quick instruction to be gentle so as not to frighten the girl. In this house, Gu Shiji had always been treated like a second daughter. While my parents were busy glaring at Lu Yunzheng, I hurried over to my maid, Baichi. I leaned in and whispered a few urgent instructions into her ear. Baichi's eyes went wide with shock, staring at me in disbelief. I squeezed her hand hard and gave her a solemn nod. She had grown up with me and was loyal to the core. She understood that today was a matter of life and death. Baichi was anxious to help me, and even though she didn't fully understand my plan, she gave me a firm nod. She turned and hurried out of Yangon Hall. When I walked back toward my parents, I saw my mother looking at me with deep concern. I forced a faint, weary smile. I told her I was worried about Shiji and had sent Baichi along to help comfort her. My mother's eyes turned red with emotion. She couldn't believe that even after being betrayed, I was still thinking about protecting Gu Shiji. She pulled me close and told me there were plenty of good men in the world. She said if I didn't want to marry, she and my father would take care of me forever. I leaned my head on her shoulder, my nose stinging with suppressed tears. I told her I wanted to stay by their side for the rest of my life. Meanwhile, Lu Yunjing's heart was already racing. Now that he knew Shiji was coming, he couldn't take his eyes off the entrance. In his past life, after returning from the border, he thought he had cleared every obstacle to be with her. He never expected I would follow him to his secret villa that day. He remembered how Shiji had watched him die right in front of her. The memory filled him with an overwhelming need to protect her. A few minutes later, a slender figure appeared. Gu Shiji walked in with a slight frown, her face pale and full of sorrow. Her long lashes fluttered, and her eyes looked clear and innocent, the very picture of a girl who needed protection. Only Bai Shuang was with her. No one noticed that Baichi was missing. Shiji's eyes were already red, and she hurried her pace, looking utterly heartbroken. Shiji, Lu Yunjing called out, his voice thick with emotion. Shiji looked up at him, and for a second, their eyes locked in a way that suggested a deep, unspoken connection. But she quickly looked away. I watched her every move, searching for any sign that she, too, had been reborn. After a moment, I relaxed slightly. It didn't seem like she had her memories yet, but I couldn't be sure. Shiji reached my side and grabbed my hand, her voice trembling. She told me how sorry she was that I had to go through this. Even though I knew the truth now, I had to admire her acting. Lu Yunjung had finally gathered the courage to propose to her directly. Inside, she had to be ecstatic. I decided to play along. I shook my head and told her it was a blessing to see his true colors before the wedding. Then, I looked her in the eye. I told her I knew she would never betray a sister. I urged her to tell him off right now so my father could have him thrown out, and we would never have to see him again. When I mentioned the words betray a sister, I saw Shiji's eyelid twitch. She looked down, staying silent. I pretended to get anxious. I asked her why she wasn't speaking, acting as if a terrible realization was hitting me. My mother stepped in, patting Shiji's shoulder and telling her not to be afraid. She promised that she and my father would back her up. I sighed inwardly. My parents trusted her far too much. They wanted to shield her from everything, just like I used to. But this time, I had proof. Shiji finally looked at Lu Yunjing. They exchanged a look that seemed like a silent agreement. Suddenly, she began to cough violently. She pulled away, sobbing into her hands, blaming herself for all the trouble. My mother immediately pulled the shaking girl into her arms, trying to soothe her. Shiji had always been frail, and my mother was terrified she would faint from the stress. My father was losing his patience. He was ready to kick Lu Yunjing out for causing such a mess. But then, Shiji looked up from my mother's arms with tears streaming down her face. She said the last thing anyone expected. She said she was willing to marry him. My parents were stunned. I just stood behind them, my lips curling into a cold, hidden smile. Shiji continued her performance, sounding incredibly selfless. She pointed out that the border wasn't peaceful and that the emperor still relied on the Lu family. She claimed she was marrying him to preserve the friendship between our families and to repay my parents for raising her. She closed her eyes, letting the tears fall, acting like she was sacrificing her entire life for us. Lu Yunjung was beaming with pride and admiration. He thought she was brilliant and far more thoughtful than I could ever be. My parents, however, refused to hear it. My mother told her that we weren't afraid of the Lu family and that neither of her daughters would be forced into a miserable marriage. Shiji just kept shaking her head, clutching my mother's hand. She whispered that she couldn't bear to see the two families become enemies. She begged to let the trouble end with her. Watching her manipulate my parents with such ease made my blood run cold. I started to wonder if she had played a part in my death in the previous life too. She knew my father's weaknesses perfectly. I felt a surge of urgency and looked toward the courtyard entrance. Right then, Baichi appeared, carrying a small wooden box. She was rushing toward us. My eyes lit up. Finally, the evidence had arrived. Baichi looked like she had seen a ghost. Her face was deathly pale, and she gripped that wooden box as if it weighed 100 pounds. When I first sent her to the courtyard, she hadn't understood why. But the moment she saw what was inside that box, her world had turned upside down. She rushed toward us, her eyes red and brimming with tears. She wasn't just scared, she was heartbroken for me. My parents were still busy comforting Shiji, who was putting on the performance of a lifetime. Baichi burst into the courtyard, her voice trembling as she called out to me. Every head turned. My father, Shen Zhengsheng, frowned and asked what was wrong. Baichi panted, explaining that she had gone to Shiji's room to fetch her, but she must have taken a different path. While she was there, she caught a maid acting suspiciously. When Baichi shouted, the girl scrambled away, knocking over the contents of the dressing table in her panic. Shiji saw her plan starting to slip. She couldn't let a servant ruin her moment. She started coughing violently, leaning into my mother, Ji-wan, with practiced fragility. My mother, worried sick, tried to wave Baichi away. She told her that a petty thief didn't matter right now and that we could deal with it later. The marriage was the priority. Shiji gave a weak, watery smile. She thought she had won. She looked at my parents, her voice soft and dripping with false sincerity. She talked about her frail health and how she only wanted to repay them for years of kindness. Then, she played her ultimate card. She brought up her biological father, The man who had died, saving my father's life years ago. It was pure emotional blackmail. She knelt on the cold ground, begging them to let her marry Lu Yunjing to save our family's honor. Lu Yunjing couldn't hold back anymore. He stepped forward, his robes sweeping the floor as he knelt beside her. He looked my parents in the eye and made a solemn vow. He promised that if he married Shiji, he would never take a concubine. He swore to be faithful to her until his last breath. They looked at each other like star-crossed lovers. It was enough to make me sick. I almost wanted to laugh. I didn't doubt his sincerity for a second. In my past life, he really had stayed away from other women. He had also stayed away from me. On our wedding night, he got so drunk he passed out. After that, he used every excuse in the book to avoid my bed. I was proud, so I eventually asked for a divorce. He played the part of the gentle, misunderstood husband until the war broke out. I waited for him to return so I could finally be free. Instead, I got a death warrant for my entire family. The memories made my breath hitch in my chest. My parents were torn. They loved me more than anything. They didn't want me to become the laughingstock of the capital by losing my fiancée to my sister. But Shiji had saved them, and her father had died for them. The guilt was eating them alive. I decided to give them a push. I stepped forward, my eyes red, looking like a woman who had lost everything. I told my parents to let them be together. I told them I didn't care about the gossip or my reputation. I forced a smile that I knew would break their hearts. I looked like I was sacrificing my happiness for the sake of the family. My parents looked devastated. They were ready to agree. That was when Baichi finally snapped. "No," she screamed. Her voice echoed through the courtyard, sharp and desperate. She shouted that everyone was being lied to. She held the wooden box high for everyone to see. Shiji's face went stiff. She didn't recognize the box. She tried to stay calm, telling herself there was no way I could have found anything. But for the first time that day, I saw a flicker of genuine terror in her eyes. Shiji hid those things so carefully. She was certain no one would ever find them, especially not a clumsy maid like Baichi. "Baichi, what is the meaning of this?" Shiji's face turned deathly pale. Her voice trembled with a sob, and she swayed as if the shock was too much for her to bear. Lu Yunjing couldn't stand seeing his sweetheart suffer. He rushed to her side, supporting her, and turned his cold glare toward my maid. "A lowly servant dares to slander her master? Uncle, aunt, is this how you treat Shiji, like your own flesh and blood? Standing by while a maid bullies her? If you won't discipline this girl, then I will." His words were sharp and arrogant, as if he were already the master of the general's mansion. But Baichi didn't flinch. She had seen my signal. The time was right. Without a word, she flipped the wooden box open, revealing a thick stack of letters inside. "If I have truly done wrong, my master and madam will punish me," Baichi said, her voice clear and steady, mirroring my own resolve. "It is not for you, an outsider, to tell us what to do." She turned to my parents, ignoring Lu Yunjing's fury. "Master, madam, please look. This is what I found in the second Mrs. room. These letters prove everything. Lu Yunjing and Shiji have been having an affair behind my lady's back for years. They've been exchanging gifts and secret promises right under your noses." Baichi's voice broke with anger at the end. "My lady has been so wrong. Shiji is the one who betrayed her sister. She deserves to be struck by lightning. And Master Lu is nothing but a heartless, despicable man who lost his conscience to lust." My parents, Shun Zhengxing and Ji Wan, froze. Their eyes widened in disbelief. They rushed forward, their hands shaking as they grabbed the letters and began to read. I played my part perfectly. I stumbled toward them, looking like a woman whose world had just collapsed. Shiji and Lu Yunjing exchanged a panicked look. Shiji finally dropped her act of weakness. She straightened her back, her mind racing for an excuse, but she didn't know where to start. How was this possible? She had hidden those letters and tokens so well. There was no way a maid looking for stolen goods could have stumbled upon them so easily. Then, a thought struck her. She looked at me. I was always the stupid one. She and Yunjing had hidden their tracks perfectly for years. If I had known earlier, with my impulsive temper, I would have screamed the house down long ago. She convinced herself I was bluffing, that I was just jealous because Yunjing chose her, and I had ordered Baichi to put on a show. She calmed down and gave Lu Yunjing a look, telling him to stay quiet. "Godfather, godmother, I didn't." Shiji cried out. Baichi must be doing this because she's upset for Sui Sui. I understand her loyalty, but to slander me like this. I am innocent. Lu Yunjing took the cue. A common slave using such filthy tricks. Shinjasue, control your maid. If you don't believe me, fine, but how can you not believe Shiji? She loves you like a sister, and you trample on her heart like this? Where's your conscience? I didn't look at him. I watched my parents. They were frantically flipping through the pages, their faces turning from shock to pure horror. I knew those letters existed because of Lu Yunjing's mother. In my past life, after the Shin family fell, she had drugged me to keep me from seeking justice. She hated me. She thought I was too loud, too unrefined. She had mocked me, saying, if it wasn't for your father's power, my son would have married his dear Shiji long ago. Why would he waste time with a crude woman like you? Back then, I thought I had misheard her. But she had laughed and thrown a box of letters at my head. I had sat on the floor, breaking the seals one by one, reading the words of love they had written to each other while they plotted my family's ruin. I remembered every word. Shiji had written, I cherish every gift and letter from my Lord Lu. In the dead of night, I take them out and feel such sweetness. I will never betray your heart. That was how I knew exactly where to send Baichi to look. Seeing that they still refused to admit it, I reached into the box and pulled out a specific item. I turned to face them, a cold, bitter smile on my lips. Heart. You talked to me about heart. I laughed, though the sound was hollow. I gave you both everything. And what did you give me? Shiji tried to step forward to explain, but I opened my palm. Lu Yunjing, do you recognize this? It was a black jade dragon pendant, an heirloom of the Lu family. On the back, the character for Lu was clearly engraved. You gave this to Shiji, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. The letter attached to it was full of passion. Do you really think I'll listen to your lies now? You two put on quite a show today. If Baichi hadn't found these, my family would have sent Shiji off to marry you with a grand celebration. The sheer cruelty of it makes my blood run cold. The moment Shiji saw the jade, her composure shattered. She shook her head instinctively, trying to deny it, but my face remained like stone. She turned to my parents, desperate. Godfather, godmother, I didn't. Please believe. Shut up. My mother, Jiwan, snapped her head around. Her eyes were bloodshot, filled with a murderous rage. She had poured so much love and effort into raising Shiji, and now, that love had turned into pure venom. The letters in her hand made her want to vomit. What a pair of shameless animals, my mother spat. You used our gratitude to insult us like this? I was actually going to wrong my own daughter to satisfy your true love? She stared at Shiji, her voice trembling with fury. You want to marry Lu Yunjing so badly? Fine. We'll let you marry him. From this day on, the whole world will know exactly how despicable you are. You and this dishonorable man are truly a match made in heaven. With a violent motion, my mother threw the box. Dozens of letters flew into the air, raining down on Shiji and Lu Yunjing like white leaves. Shiji stumbled back, terrified. She had never seen my mother look so lethal. The fear finally took hold of her, cold and suffocating. She knew it was over. My mother rushed to me, pulling me into a tight embrace. Her tears fell onto my shoulder. She kept apologizing, realizing how much I had been forced to endure alone. I leaned into her, letting the weight of the past life finally start to lift. Compared to the hatred of seeing my entire family executed in my past life, this grievance was nothing. But for my parents, the pain was fresh. Shiji saw my mother's heart had turned to stone, so she turned to my father, Shun Zhengxing. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she wailed, Godfather. My father slowly shook his head. He looked more heartbroken than anyone. I could see the question in his eyes. Had he raised her poorly, or was she simply born evil? He had been played for a fool by a girl he treated as his own. When Shiji realized her favorite protector was ignoring her, she panicked. She was terrified. If word of this scandal got out, the Lu family might refuse to let her through their doors. Without the Shin family backing her, she was just an insignificant orphan. She bit her lip. No, she had worked too hard for too many years. She had to marry into the Lu family with the prestige of a general's daughter. Slowly, she lifted her head. The fragile, weak act she usually wore began to peel away, inch by inch. She looked at my mother with a cold, sharp gaze. "Godmother," Shiji said, her voice dropping its sweetness. "You always said you loved and pitied me. But you chose Lu Yunjung for Jiasue, a man among men. For me, you picked your own nephew. Is that what you call treating us the same?" She sneered. "Jiasue gets to marry the eldest son of a great general. I'm only fit for the nameless second son of a count. If Jiasue really wanted Lu Yunjung, she should have guarded him better. You can't force feelings. Yunjung and I love each other. If you truly cared for me, you'd be figuring out how to let me marry into the Lu family alongside Jiasue." My mother's eyes widened in shock. She looked like she had been slapped. All those years of care felt like a sick joke. Her eldest nephew was already married, and the second son she'd chosen for Shiji was brilliant, kind, and gentle. She had handpicked him so Shiji would be cherished and taken care of for life. She had exhausted herself worrying about Shiji's future, only to find out the girl looked down on them all. Shiji didn't wait for a response. She turned to my father. "Godfather, I know you're disappointed. But don't forget, my father gave his life to save yours. My mother died because of that. It's because of you that I'm a lonely orphan." She stepped forward, her face twisting with a hint of madness. "The world says a drop of kindness should be repaid with a fountain of gratitude. My father's sacrifice was more than a drop. The wealth and status of this general's mansion? I deserve a share of it. No matter what I do, you have no right to judge me. My parents bought this life for me with their blood." The resentment she had suppressed for years poured out of her like venom. My father stared at her, horrified by this stranger. Even Lu Yunjung looked stunned. To everyone, Shiji had always been the gentle, soft-spoken girl who wouldn't hurt a fly. After her outburst, Shiji looked satisfied. But she quickly noticed Lu Yunjing's pale face. Her expression shifted instantly. She doubled over, coughing violently. Her thin frame shook, making her look helpless again. It worked. Lu Yunjing snapped out of it and rushed to support her. "Shiji, are you okay?" He looked around the room, seeing that no one in my family moved to help her. His face hardened. "Shiji, don't be afraid. Even if the Shun family is ungrateful, you still have me." My mother's heart was cold, but I stepped forward before she could speak. 1963, I said. My voice was like ice. Shiji's coughing stopped. Lu Yunjung looked up, his brow furrowed with annoyance. "Shen Jiasue, what nonsense are you talking about?" I looked them both in the eye. "That is the number of soldiers who died in the battle where Shiji's father fell. The number of men buried on that battlefield." Lu Yunjing stiffened. "My family has always been grateful to Vice General Gu," I continued. "We have supported Shiji with everything we have. But that is not an excuse for her to stab us in the back. Lu Yunjung, you were born into a military family. You should know that protecting the country is a soldier's duty. The moment they step onto the field, they leave life and death behind." I stepped closer to him. Every time my father went to war, he said goodbye to us as if it were the last time. He didn't focus on coming back. He focused on holding the border for one more day. Isn't your father, General Lu, the same? If you don't understand that sacrifice, then quit being a soldier. You don't deserve the rank. Lu Yunjing's face turned pale under my glare. I turned my attention back to Shiji. She still looked defiant, so I went for the truth. "Shiji, do you know how my father lost his left arm?" "Jiasue," my father barked, trying to stop me. I didn't stop. I tore the secret open. In that battle, it was your father, Vice General Gu, who led his unit into an ambush because he was reckless. My father took his men into the trap to save him. His arm was hacked off by the enemy during the rescue. As the army retreated, your father stayed behind to cover my father's escape. That is how he died. I looked at her trembling form. I'm not denying his sacrifice, but I will not let you use that kindness as a weapon to trample on my family's heart. Shiji's face went white. She stared at the floor, a flash of panic crossing her eyes before she screamed, "You're lying. If it was my father's fault, why would Godfather feel so guilty? Why would he give me everything? You're just making this up because you can't let go of Yunjing. You want to stop me from marrying him." I looked at her with genuine pity. It was like I was seeing her for the first time. I didn't bother arguing with her anymore. I looked at Lu Yunjing. "Lu Yunjing, do you think I'm lying too?" Lu Yunjing's expression shifted. He remembered when my father had returned from the border years ago, missing an arm. He had asked his own father back then if the enemy had a legendary warrior who could take down a man like Shin Zhengxin. His father hadn't given details then. He had only muttered that a certain vice-general had been too greedy for glory and fell into a trap. And that was how the general had lost his arm. I saw the look on Lu Yunjing's face. He knew. He remembered his father's words about the greedy vice-general, and he knew I wasn't lying. I didn't have any hesitation left. Today, I was going to cut this cancer out of my family's home for good. Lu Yunjing, I said, my voice steady. Since you're so deeply in love with Shiji that you refuse to marry anyone else, fine. Take her with you. Right now. Shiji's head snapped up. Her face turned a ghostly white. She hadn't expected this. If she left with him like this, without a formal dowry or a wedding, she'd have no status at all. But Lu Yunjing didn't see the problem. His eyes lit up with pure joy. Are you serious? He asked, sounding like he couldn't wait to get away. I turned to my parents. They were the ones who had to give the final word. My mother, Ji-won, looked at me with heartbreak, but when she glanced at Shiji, her eyes turned cold as flint. Let her go, my mother said. I'll just consider the years I spent loving her as food thrown to a stray dog. My father, Shun Zhengsheng, was more composed, but his expression was complicated. He looked at Shiji one last time. If you stay in the general's mansion, I will ensure you are taken care of for the rest of your life. But you will never see Lu Yunjing again. Shiji's hands shook. She pointed a trembling finger at us, her voice thick with resentment. How can you be so heartless? After everything my father did, aren't you afraid the whole world will laugh at your ingratitude? I didn't let her finish. I looked at the ecstatic Lu Yunjing. Since you love her so much, surely you'll welcome her into the Lu family as your primary wife with all the proper honors. Isn't that what you both wanted? Lu Yunjing nodded instantly. He grabbed Shiji's hand. Shiji, come with me. If you stay here, they'll never let us be together. They won't treat you well after today anyway. I'll take you home right now and tell my parents. They'll understand my heart. They'll let me marry you. He was begging her. I didn't doubt his sincerity for a second. And I knew Shiji wouldn't refuse. Her mask had been ripped off. She couldn't stay here and act the victim anymore. Yunjing, I'll go with you, Shiji whispered. Her eyes were red, looking at him with that fragile, dependent gaze he loved so much. Lu Yunjing almost cheered. He finally had his beloved. He pulled her toward the door, right in front of my parents. My mother stepped forward, physically blocking me so I wouldn't have to look at them. Wait, my father called out. It was his final warning. I am a man of my word. If you stay, you will be cared for. But if you walk out that door, your honor and your future will depend entirely on Lu Yunjing. Think carefully. Shiji paused for a second. Lu Yunjing held his breath, terrified she'd change her mind. But she didn't turn around. Godfather, she said, her voice cold. This is the last time I'll call you that. Next time we meet, I won't be a girl living under someone else's roof. I'll be the eldest daughter-in-law of the Lu family. I only hope that General Shin won't hold a grudge and try to ruin Yunjing's career because of today. Let's just act like strangers from now on. My father closed his eyes. The last spark of affection he had for her died right there. Shiji didn't look at him, though. She looked at me. She wanted to see me broken. She wanted to see me crying because my fiancé was being stolen. I just smiled and gave her a small, polite nod. Like I was saying, congratulations. She frowned, confused by my reaction, but Lu Yunjing pulled her away. They left the courtyard without looking back. Silence fell over the Yangon pavilion. It was a lot to take in for one day. Sway, sway, my father said eventually, his voice sounding tired. Come inside. I need to talk to you. I followed him. I knew I couldn't hide the truth from him forever. I was the one who sent Baichi. I was the one who timed the evidence. But I didn't want to hide it. This knot in our family had to be cut. As I walked into the hall, Baichi tried to follow, but my mother stopped her. Baichi looked nervous, probably thinking she was in trouble for the letters. Instead, my mother pressed something into her hand. It was the Lu family's heirloom jade pendant. Take this, my mother whispered, her face grim. Ride to the Lu mansion as fast as you can. Tell the general and his wife everything that happened here today. You must get there before Lu Yunjing does. Tell them the general has raised a fine son and that the Shun family cannot possibly climb high enough to match such a match. Go. Baichi's eyes lit up. She was trained in martial arts and knew the way to the Lu mansion by heart. "I won't let you down, madam," she said, before disappearing like a whirlwind. My mother watched her go, a cold smirk touching her lips. Did Lu Yunjing really think he could betray my daughter and walk away clean? The show wasn't over. It was the Lu family's turn now. I stood by the door, watching her. My mother noticed me and smiled. We understood each other perfectly. I knew the moment she asked for that jade that she was going to strike back. I started thinking about Lu Yunjing's mother, a woman who had been nothing but cold to me in my past life, and their clever concubine, Aunt Jo. Things were about to get very messy for them. Meanwhile, Baichi reached the Lu mansion without any trouble. General Lu was a large, imposing man, and he was currently in a great mood. He had sent his son to propose to me today, and he was incredibly proud of the match. He had worked hard to secure a daughter of the Shun family for his son. His wife sat beside him, looking elegant but strained, as if she were carrying a heavy weight. When Baichi was brought in, the general laughed. "Did Sui Sui send you with a message already?" Baichi didn't smile. She held out the heirloom jade pendant with both hands. "I am here on behalf of Madame Shun to return this," Baichi said, her voice loud and clear. "She asked me to tell you that you have raised a wonderful son. The Shun family is simply not worthy of this marriage. We are breaking the engagement." The general and his wife bolted upright, their faces twisting in shock. While the front hall descended into chaos, in the back of the Lu mansion, Aunt Jo was lounging on her daybed. Beside her, a young, pretty girl was busy with her needlework, unaware that the world of the Lu family was about to burn down. Inside the Lu mansion, Aunt Jo was relaxing with her daughter, Lu Yunyao. They were laughing and chatting, enjoying a quiet afternoon. That peace didn't last long. A maid named Motherly came rushing into the room, her face pale and her breath shallow. She was one of Aunt Jo's most trusted servants, but right now, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Aunt Jo didn't even look up at first. She told Motherly to calm down, reminding her that she was too old to be acting so frantic. But the news Motherly brought stopped everything. She leaned in and whispered that Lu Yunjing had just ruined his engagement with me. Not only that, he had publicly begged to marry Shiji instead. Aunt Jo bolted upright. Even young Yunyao gasped. They couldn't believe it. Motherly confirmed that my maid, Baichi, was currently in the main hall returning the family jade. The message was clear. The engagement was dead. Aunt Jo's eyes lit up with a predatory glow. She had been worried that Lu Yunjing's marriage to a daughter of the Shun family would make him untouchable. She feared her own son, Shengji, would never be able to compete. But now, Lu Yunjing had thrown away his golden ticket for a piece of trash. She didn't even have to work to destroy him. He was doing it himself. She decided right then to head to the front hall to add some fuel to the fire. Meanwhile, a carriage pulled up to the Lu mansion gates. Lu Yunjing jumped down and reached back to help Shiji out. She was wearing a veiled hat, trying to hide her face, but I knew she was feeling a mix of triumph and terror. She had been to this house many times before, but she had always been walking behind me. Back then, everyone's eyes were on me. Now, she thought it was finally her turn. She asked Lu Yunjing if he was sure he could handle his father. She was worried. Without the Shin family backing her, she was just an orphan with nothing but him. Lu Yunjing took a deep breath. He was arrogant. He believed that because he knew the future, a future where my family was destined to fall, he was actually doing his father a favor by cutting ties early. He told Shiji not to worry. He promised he would protect her, even if she had to suffer a little bit of injustice today. They walked into the mansion together, hand in hand, and immediately ran into Baichi. She was on her way out. Lu Yunjing's face turned black the moment he saw her. He blocked her path, his voice dripping with venom. He started screaming, calling me despicable and two-faced. He thought I had sent Baichi to tattle on him to his parents so they would force him to marry me. He said the very thought of me made him sick. Shiji played her part perfectly, whispering that she was worried the general would hate her now because of whatever Baichi had said. That was the breaking point for Lu Yunjing. He raised his hand, ready to strike my maid for disrespecting his new lover. Baichi didn't flinch. She stood her ground and shouted for General Lu to witness how his son was treating a messenger. Just as Lu Yunjing's hand was about to fall, the general stepped out of the hall. He looked like a thunderstorm ready to break. His voice boomed across the courtyard, ordering his son to get on his knees. Lu Yunjing froze. Seeing his father alive and well seemed to daze him for a moment. Baichi took that chance to bow gracefully and leave. She had done her job. She wanted to stay and watch the show, but she knew it was time to go. Lu Yunjing tried to stop her, still obsessed with clearing Shiji's name, but his father wasn't having it. General Lu was shaking with rage. He looked ready to beat his son senseless right there in the dirt. Madame Lu rushed out and threw herself in front of her son. She was pale and trembling, begging her husband to listen to their son's side of the story before doing something drastic. She didn't like me. She thought I was too bold and too hard to control, but she wasn't a fool. She knew my family's power was the only thing that mattered. In her mind, Lu Yunjing was an idiot. If he wanted Shiji so badly, he should have just married me first and taken Shiji as a concubine later. That was the smart way to handle things. But her son had chosen the path of total destruction. Madame Lu's mind was racing. She was looking for a way to have it all. In her head, the solution was simple. Why couldn't her son just marry me first and then take Shiji as a concubine later? It was a win-win. But before she could suggest a compromise, Lu Yunjing dragged Shiji down to the floor. They both knelt, looking like a pair of tragic lovers. He looked at his parents with total sincerity. He admitted he was wrong for breaking the engagement so publicly, but he insisted there was a reason. He begged them to go somewhere private so he could explain. Then, he dropped the bomb. He told them he and Shiji were soulmates. He called her gentle, kind, and the only person who truly understood him. Since the engagement with my family was already ruined, he asked his parents to let him marry Shiji as his primary wife. Shiji had been terrified of General Lu's temper just a moment ago. But seeing Lu Yunjing stand up for her gave her a surge of hope. She leaned into him, her heart fluttering, and bowed deeply alongside him. Madame Lu panicked. She knew what was coming. Sure enough, General Lu let out a roar of pure disgust. He called them fools. He didn't see true love. He saw two people engaging in a shameful, secret affair. Shiji turned deathly pale. Her body went limp, and she looked like she was about to faint. Lu Yunjing caught her, his own anger rising. He always felt his father favored his younger brother and looked down on him. Now, his father was insulting the woman he loved without any mercy. General Lu clenched and unclenched his fists, trying to keep from hitting his son. He told Lu Yunjing that he had worked tirelessly to secure the marriage with my family. He asked how he was supposed to face my father now. The general didn't care about his son's reasons. To him, breaking a vow was a sign of bad character. He told Lu Yunjing that if he was this treacherous now, no soldier would ever trust him on a battlefield. He ordered his son to get up, go to our house, and beg for my forgiveness. Shiji gripped Lu Yunjing's hand tight. She was terrified of losing him. Lu Yunjing gripped back and snapped at his father. He claimed this was just a family matter and had nothing to do with leading an army. He refused to go to my house, saying he had already offended my family and wouldn't go back just to be humiliated. General Lu almost laughed from pure rage. He told his son that he had officially ruined his own future. Then, he revealed a dark truth. He reminded Lu Yunjing that Shiji's father was a failure who caused a massive defeat, the very battle where my father lost his arm. My father had only taken Shiji in out of pity. General Lu called his son a heartless beast for betraying the family that had raised his lover. Shiji's face drained of color. She looked like a ghost. But Lu Yunjing couldn't stand to hear a word against her. He argued that the past was the past, and that Shiji was innocent. He told his father he was just biased. Madame Lu's hatred for Shiji hit a breaking point. She couldn't stand the girl's weak and helpless act. She saw right through the manipulation. She was also worried about the family power struggle. A concubine in the house, Zhou, was waiting for Lu Yunjing to mess up so her own son could take his place. My marriage was supposed to secure Lu Yunjing's future, and Shiji had set it all on fire. Madame Lu tried one last time to talk sense into him. She told him that if he liked the girl so much, he could just wait until I moved in and then make Shiji a concubine. She begged him to go apologize to my family before it was too late. A concubine. The word hit Shiji like a physical blow. Her head spun, and she collapsed into Lu Yunjing's arms. She didn't say a word, but her eyes were full of tears. She looked at him as if to say, You promised I would be your wife. Lu Yunjing panicked. He promised her right then and there that he wouldn't break his word. He looked at his parents and declared that he would marry no one but Shiji. He begged them to just accept it. His parents stared at him like he was possessed. Suddenly, a soft, mocking voice drifted through the air. It was Zhou, the concubine. She walked in, waving a silk fan, mocking how Shiji had turned the eldest son against his own parents. Lu Yunjung glared at her. In his past life, Zhou had been a thorn in his side because of his father's favoritism. Back then, my mother had eventually dealt with her after the general died in battle. By the time Lu Yunjung had returned from the border in his previous life, Zhou and her children were long gone. Now, Zhou stood there, having watched the whole drama from the shadows. Madame Lu hated the interference, and the general frowned, hating the internal bickering. But Zhou was smart. She didn't attack Lu Yunjung directly. Instead, she looked at Shiji and remarked on how pitiful she looked. She pointed out that Shiji had been to the house many times as my companion, hinting at her calculated behavior. Lu Yunjung told her to shut up, but Zhou wouldn't stop. She warned him that Shiji was a deep, calculating actress and told him to keep his eyes open. Shiji's tears flowed even harder. She realized that the hardship Lu Yunjung mentioned meant enduring constant insults. She felt she had no one left to turn to. She grabbed Lu Yunjung's sleeve, her voice trembling, and begged him to take her away. She looked like a fragile porcelain doll about to shatter. It was her final move, retreating to win him over. Lu Yunjung felt a sharp pain in his heart. This was the girl he had loved for 2 lifetimes. He turned to Zhou with a look of pure murder and told her she had no right to speak. Zhou acted startled, but the damage was already done. Zhou didn't stop. She ducked behind General Lu for protection but kept her tongue sharp. She told the general that his eldest son was being completely manipulated by a few tears. She pointed out that if Shiji were truly a good woman, she would have stayed far away from her sister's fiancé. She called Shiji out for her calculated ambition, claiming she had been plotting for years to become the young mistress of the Lu household. Surprisingly, Madame Lu didn't silence her this time. She watched her son, wondering if he had truly fallen under some kind of dark spell. It was time someone woke him up. Shiji heard every word. Her secrets were being stripped away in public, leaving her nowhere to hide. Her face went pale, and she bit her lip until it bled. For a moment, she felt a flash of shame, but then she justified it to herself. Why shouldn't she strive for a better life? Was she supposed to just marry some nobody her foster mother picked out? Seeing the situation spiral out of control, Shiji decided to take the easy way out. Her head tilted, her eyes closed, and she collapsed into a dead faint. Lu Yunjing panicked. He caught her, shouting her name in a frenzy. Zhou watched from the sidelines with a hidden smirk. She told him to just pinch the girl's pressure points to wake her up, but Lu Yunjung let out a feral roar, telling her to shut up. He scooped Shiji up in his arms, feeling a wave of guilt for the insults she had endured. He turned to his parents, his voice cold and final. He told them he would marry no one but Shiji. Madame Lu was desperate to stop him from saying something he couldn't take back. She begged him for a reason, any reason, to explain why he was throwing away his future with my family. Lu Yunjung stepped forward, lowering his voice. He told his father that the general's mansion of the Shun family would be wiped out within 2 years. He claimed he was breaking things off now to avoid being dragged down with us. Bastard. My father's friend, General Lu, didn't even let him finish. He was disgusted. He couldn't believe his son would invent such a vile lie just to marry a girl like Shiji. Madame Lu stared at her son as if he were a stranger. Lu Yunjung grew desperate. He told them he had proof, but they had to go to the study where they couldn't be overheard. He glanced at Zhou, knowing his rebirth was a secret he couldn't share with outsiders. But General Lu had seen enough. He told his son this was the last chance. Go to the Shun house, apologize, and send Shiji away. He warned him not to destroy his own future. Lu Yunjung looked at his parents and felt a chill of disappointment. He had lived an entire life already. He had achieved feats his father never could, defeating the Mo kingdom and becoming a national hero. He knew things they didn't. He knew he didn't need the Shun family to reach the top. I am not going back to the Shun house, he said, his voice hard as stone. I want no one but Shiji. If you try to stop me. He didn't finish the sentence. He simply turned and walked out of the Lu mansion with the unconscious Shiji in his arms. Madame Lu chased after him, crying out his name, but General Lu barked at her to let him go. He shouted after his son, telling him he was nothing without the family name. Lu Yunzheng didn't even look back. He told his father he would regret this decision, claiming he was never meant for a small pond anyway. He walked straight out the front gates, leaving his mother in tears. Zhou stood behind the general, her face masked in concern, but a tiny, satisfied smile played on her lips. Meanwhile, back at my home, I had finished telling my parents everything. I told them about my dreams, the memories of my past life, as if they were a warning from the heavens. I left out the most painful parts, the nights of suffering in the Lu house and the bloody battle at the Western Villa, but I told them enough. The room went silent. My father, Shun Zhengsheng, and my mother, Ji Wan, sat there in a daze. I started to worry they didn't believe me. I pointed out that finding the letters in Shiji's room was proof enough. I told them the heavens were protecting the Shin family, and that we had to be careful because Lu Yunzheng seemed changed, too. Suddenly, my mother walked toward me. I braced myself for questions, but instead, she pulled me into a tight embrace. Her voice trembled as she told me she believed everything I said. She wasn't thinking about the politics or the betrayal. She was thinking about the girl in my dream. She realized that if our family had fallen, I would have been left all alone with no one to turn to. She said her heart was breaking just imagining how scared I must have been. I froze. I had tried so hard to hide the worst details, but a mother's love sees through everything. My heart ached, and the tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. I buried my face in her shoulder and sobbed. My father came over and gently rubbed my head. He was a man of few words, but his touch was tender. He knew my character. I wouldn't make up such a story. If there was even a chance our family was headed for ruin, he had to take it seriously. He realized that a boy like Lu Yunzheng couldn't have planned a downfall this massive on his own. Someone else was pulling the strings. We had to strike first and find the person hiding in the shadows. He decided to wait outside the gates, keeping a close eye on anyone approaching. Baichi caught sight of Lu Yunzheng carrying Shiji out of the Lu residence, looking utterly defeated. A satisfied smile played on her lips as she hurried back to the general's mansion to report the news. When she entered the Yangon courtyard, she found me still in tears while my parents tried their best to comfort me. Baichi's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly stepped forward and recounted everything she had seen and heard at the Lu mansion. My mother, Ji Wan, listened with a series of cold snorts. When she heard that Lu Yunjing's attempt to stir up trouble had failed, a look of genuine satisfaction finally crossed her face. Suddenly, my father, Shun Zhengsheng, spoke up. He told my mother to get ready because old Lu would likely be at our doors soon. My mother's eyebrows shot up in anger. She snapped that Lu Yongzhu had some nerve showing his face here, and that she'd be doing him a favor if she only chased him out with a broom. My mother had been raised as the pampered daughter of a marquis and was known for her fiery temper. She was mostly just venting, though. The fact that Lu Yunzheng had been kicked out of his own home showed where the Lu family patriarch stood. Besides, I had already told them that Lu Yongzhu didn't have much longer to live. There were layers to this situation that we needed to navigate carefully. My father knew my mother's bark was worse than her bite. They had been happily married for 20 years, and he knew exactly how to handle her. He nodded with a fierce glint in his eyes and promised her he'd give the Lu family a piece of his mind. That settled it for her. She nodded, satisfied, and I couldn't help but let out a small laugh through my tears. Just then, a servant arrived to announce that General Lu and his wife had arrived. My mother let out a cold laugh. They were fast. She decided to let them sit and wait for a while. By the time Madame Lu was finally invited into the inner courtyard, she and the general had been sitting in the hall for 15 minutes. No tea was served. No servants attended to them. General Lu sat there stoically, knowing he was in the wrong, but Madame Lu was clearly seething. When she finally saw my mother, she forced a fake smile and tried to apologize. My mother remained ice-cold and refused to even acknowledge the gesture. Madame Lu's smile began to stiffen. I knew what she was thinking. She was blaming me and my mother, convinced that if I weren't so unpleasant, her son wouldn't have strayed. She truly believed it was my fault for not being able to hold on to his heart, but she didn't dare show that. She took a breath and tried to play the loving aunt card. She told my mother how much she loved me and blamed her son for being blind and foolish. She claimed her husband had already punished him severely. Then, she asked to see me personally so she could apologize on his behalf. She had a hidden motive. Her husband was truly furious with Lu Yunjing. If this wasn't resolved, her son would lose his standing in the family. She assumed that since I had been engaged to him for years, I must still be in love with him. He was, after all, a handsome and prominent young man in the capital. She figured if she could convince me to change my mind, she could force her son to marry me, and Shiji could just be a concubine or a mistress on the side. To her, the key to everything was me. She kept piling on the sweet talk, acting as if she'd die of guilt if she didn't see me. My mother remained unmoved, nearly rolling her eyes. But then, I stepped out from the inner room. My mother immediately went to my side, telling me I didn't have to see anyone if I didn't want to. Madame Lu gritted her teeth at the blatant disrespect, but her eyes lit up when she saw my red, swollen eyes. To her, this was proof. She thought I was heartbroken and unable to let go. She saw an opportunity to regain control. She imagined a future where I was her daughter-in-law, living under her thumb, where she could finally put my mother in her place. She rushed over and grabbed my hand, acting as if she truly felt sorry for me. I gave my mother a reassuring look before turning to Madame Lu. I could see right through her forced smile. In my past life, we had gotten along well enough until my family fell. Then, she showed her true face, even going as far as to poison and humiliate me. I was only here to finish this. I pulled my hand away, my voice trembling as I told her there was nothing left to say. I kept my head down, making sure she saw my tear-stained face and trembling lip. I wanted her to think I was weak and devastated. Madame Lu took the bait. She stepped closer and patted my shoulder, telling me that her son was just bewitched, but that he truly loved me. She claimed he used to talk about marrying me every single day. She promised to bring him back to apologize personally once he cleared his head. I hesitated, biting my lip as if I were considering it. She pushed harder, claiming she would only ever accept me as her daughter-in-law. My mother was fuming beside me, disgusted by the woman's shameless lies. But I had a plan. Finally, I looked up with a face full of sorrow. I shook my head and told her not to say another word. I told her my heart was broken and that I wanted nothing more to do with Lu Yunjing. Then, I turned and fled back into the inner room, leaving her with the image of a girl utterly destroyed by love. I felt a deep, hollow ache in my chest. My mother, Ji-won, didn't hold back anymore. She looked at Madame Lu with cold, hard eyes and told her to leave. Madame Lu didn't even care about my mother's attitude. She was convinced I hadn't given up on her son yet. She probably thought that if she could just convince Lu Yunjing to apologize to me, everything would go back to normal. She had a lot of confidence. She figured there was no way a girl like Shiji could truly steal her son's heart away from his own mother's wishes. Madame Lu gave a polite nod and let the maid lead her out. As soon as she was gone, my mother rushed into the inner room. She found me pressing a cold gold compress to my face to soothe the swelling. She sighed, asking if I had refused to use the compress earlier just so I would look worse when Madame Lu arrived. Before the Lu family showed up, I had cried about a dream I had, leaving my eyes and nose red and puffy. My mother had tried to help then, but I had told her it wasn't time. By waiting, I made Madame Lu believe I was still heartbroken and obsessed with her son. I moved the compress away and gave my mother a sly smile. In my past life, Madame Lu had called Shiji her dear daughter-in-law right to my face. She had screamed at me, saying I was stealing a position that belonged to Shiji and blocking their perfect union. I was curious to see how she would treat Shiji this time. I wanted to see how she would force Lu Yunjing to change his mind. But there was another reason for my act. I had used Baichi to find those letters today to break the engagement. Lu Yunjing wasn't stupid. Once he calmed down, he would start to suspect me. I needed Madame Lu to tell him how devastated I looked. I had to keep him confused so I could stay 3 steps ahead in this game. Across town at the West Jing Villa, Lu Yunjing was carrying Shiji inside. He hated this place. It was where she had died in her previous life. But he didn't own many properties, and this one was well-maintained and ready for guests. He hurried past the main hall and shouted for an old servant to go find a doctor immediately. Shiji let out a soft moan and slowly opened her eyes. She looked around, acting dazed and frightened. She asked where they were and what was happening. This villa used to be their secret getaway, a place full of sweet memories. Seeing her so vulnerable made Lu Yunjing's heart melt. He apologized softly, telling her he wouldn't let her suffer anymore and that they could stay here for now. Shiji sat up straight. Instead of being angry that he had broken his promises, she looked at him with pure worry. She tried to push him away, telling him to go back. She cried that she didn't matter, but he couldn't ruin his future or fight with his father because of her. She begged him to go to the Shin family and apologize to me. Lu Yunjing was overwhelmed with love. He felt like he wanted to pluck his own heart out and give it to her. He pulled her into a tight hug, his voice trembling. He told her he couldn't live without her. Out of all the people in the world, he only wanted her. Shiji whispered that he was a fool and wrapped her arms around his waist. With her chin resting on his shoulder, hidden from his sight, the warmth in Shiji's eyes instantly vanished. She was filled with resentment. She didn't want to be a hidden mistress kept in some villa. She wanted a title. She wanted a real wedding. But Lu Yunjing just kept whispering promises, telling her he would make her a general's wife and give her the best life possible. Shiji just kept nodding, telling him she believed him. Lu Yunjing couldn't go home after his big fight with his father, so he stayed for dinner. Shiji had no appetite. She stared at the food, her brow furrowed. She told him something felt wrong. She had hidden those letters so well that even her personal maid didn't know where they were. It felt too convenient that a thief broke in and Baichi just happened to catch them. Everything had been going perfectly until that exact moment. Lu Yunjing froze. He looked up, his eyes widening so much that his chopsticks slipped from his hand and hit the floor. Shiji jumped, asking him what was wrong. She wanted to ask why he had told the general that the Shun family would be destroyed within 2 years, but she was still supposed to be recovering from her faint, so she kept quiet. Lu Yunjing stood up slowly. He replayed my behavior from earlier over and over in his head. Could I have returned from the past too? No, it didn't seem like it. In our last life, I was impulsive and reckless. When we died, I looked like I wanted to eat him alive. How could I be so calm now? He wondered if he had ever truly known me at all. A cold chill ran down his spine. He felt like a blade was pressed against his back. He wanted to run to the Shun house right then to find out the truth. He snapped back to reality and looked at Shiji. He told her they had to leave after dinner. His parents would find this place eventually, and besides, the villa felt unlucky. Shiji didn't understand why he was acting so strange, but she nodded anyway. She told him she would go wherever he went. Lu Yunjing looked at her with pity. He decided not to tell her about his rebirth. She was already so fragile. Knowing he had died at my hands would only terrify her. He needed to focus on testing me to see who I really was. By the next morning, the scandal between the Shun and Lu families had already spread through every corner of the capital. My father, Shun Zhengsheng, was the talk of the town. Lu Yunjing had lost an arm on the battlefield, but his favor with the emperor hadn't faded one bit. He was still the golden boy of the court. Since my father, Shun Zhengsheng, had retired from active duty, Lu Yunjing had become the backbone of the military, the man standing between us and the Mo kingdom. A marriage between our two families was supposed to be the event of the century. Everyone was watching, but the spectacle they got wasn't a wedding. Lu Yunjing had shown up at the general's mansion to propose, only to leave with another woman tucked under his arm. They had scurried back to the Lu residence and then fled like dogs in the night. The capital was in an uproar. My family didn't wait for the dust to settle. We put out word immediately. The engagement was off. We told the world Lu Yunjing was a man of broken faith and poor character. The Lu family didn't even try to defend him. They just stayed silent and took the blow. The gossip spread like wildfire. People dug into every detail they could find. They talked about Shiji, the orphan my father had taken in. Some even whispered she was my father's secret love child from his years at the border. The story on the street was that Lu Yunjing never wanted me at all. He was hopelessly devoted to the adopted daughter. He was so obsessed that he'd broken ties with his own family just to run away with her. The rumors grew teeth. People said Shiji must be a legendary beauty to have cast such a spell on him. Then, they turned their sights on me. The world is always cruel to women. By the next morning, I was being mocked in every tea house. They said I was ugly. They said I was a tomboy who spent all my time playing with spears and swords instead of learning how to be a wife. To them, it made perfect sense why I was abandoned. I lacked feminine charm. A few people took my side, calling Lu Yunjung a traitor and a cheat. They called Shiji a white-eyed wolf for stealing the fiancé of the family that raised her. But mostly, the private shame of our two families was just public entertainment. Back at the general's mansion, I didn't feel like a victim. I finished a grueling set of spear forms in the courtyard, my body drenched in sweat. I walked back to my room and drained a cup of tea in one long gulp. It felt incredible. In my past life, after I married into the Lu family, Lu Yunjung treated me with nothing but coldness. My mother-in-law hated my training. She sent maids to lecture me every time I picked up a weapon, claiming it was improper for a lady. I had wanted to keep the peace, so I tucked my spear away. It never saw the light of day again until it was too late. But when I walked into my room today and saw my spear standing on its rack, I couldn't help myself. My movements were a bit rusty, but it didn't matter. No one could suppress me anymore. I was finally breathing again. I was in a great mood until Baichi walked in. Her face was dark, twisted with a frustration she couldn't hide. When she saw me looking, she tried to force a smile, but it looked more like a grimace. I raised an eyebrow. "You heard what they're saying, didn't you?" I asked. Her composure crumbled instantly. She looked like she was about to cry from pure rage. "Miss, I wish I could go out there and sew all their mouths shut." I loosened my collar and headed toward the inner washroom, a small smile playing on my lips. "Then you'd be busy for a very long time. There are thousands of mouths in this capital. You'd never finish." Baichi followed me, her face slick with sweat from anxiety. She thought I didn't realize how serious this was. "Miss, you don't understand. They're saying such horrible things about you." I knew. I knew better than anyone. In my previous life, when my family was framed for treason, the insults that rained down on us were 1,000 times worse than this. I had stood before the gates of the general's mansion back then and seen the ground stained black and red with the filth people threw at us. Compared to that, this was nothing but noise.